My name is Julie Masters. I'm the founder and CEO of Influence Nation. Also founded a talent management company called Ode Management for speakers and thought leaders and authorities here and in America. Career highlights, that's an interesting one. Career highlights, I think that it's been so many. Yeah, opening up in America, that was a massive journey, and to turn it into a success and to start from a little team in Sydney, Australia, and to see it go global, that was probably the largest career highlight to date. I know Mark through firstly through his wife, firstly through Michelle, and then through another CEO I know of a large organisation. I can't remember whether Mark introduced me to her or she introduced me to Mark, but anyway, it just he's one of those people I think that just appears. He just appears, and he's got such a presence about him that when he appears, he captures your attention and you remember him. And so that's kind of how it feels. It feels like, I'm not quite sure how we got introduced along the way. I'm fairly sure it was through his wife, the amazing Michelle. But yeah, it just felt like he appeared and I went, oh, I'm glad you're here. Mark is a rock. Let's just put it that way, I think. He's just got this unique combination of, he's been there, he's done it, he's got the business knowledge, he understands the marketplace, so you can turn to him for that. But he's also got this other side where he just brings a stillness and a reflection and a perspective to things. Through all of his experiences, meandering around the world, travelling with religious figures, studying festivals and monks, he just brings this other thing. And so you asked me what he does. He coaches, he mentors, he watches, like he just watches you and then steps in with a word here or there. I remember spending some time with him. I was going through a particularly rough patch in my life, or let's call it a transitional patch in my life. And I don't think he said anything for hours. I think he just let me ramble on for hours and just keep talking. And every so often he'd just say something. And then he'd ask a question. And then he'd throw something in. And so, you asked me what he does. I feel like he's almost like a signpost. I feel like he acts like a signpost. Doesn't say much sometimes, but he just points. Avoid that, don't go there, you're about 20 kilometres from here. Just kind of keeps you on the right track in every element. Keeps you on the right track business-wise and focus-wise, but he also keeps you on the right track in who you are and who you're being, because if you've ever run a business or you've ever tried to do anything that's larger than you, create anything at scale, you will always, I think, hit that point where you feel like you're just running in this endless race. And it's really lonely and nobody's really running with you. And the only way that this race is ever going to stop is if you just fall down on the floor. And I think to have somebody that can not only give you advice from a business perspective, but just look at the whole of you and give you some signposts or some guidance from that perspective, from who are you being in this moment, who do you want to be, where do you want to get to, what's important to you. He really gave me permission to be still. I remember that. I remember being at a point where I had finished one chapter or journey, and I was used to running at such a pace that I was just ready to run straight into the next. And I remember he said to me, these spaces, they're really precious, they're really rare, and you need to use it. You need to sink into it, you need to get still, because trust me, there'll be time to run later, but you can't start one chapter while you're still reading the last one or using the rules of the last one. And he just gave me permission just to take some space and take a breath and stop. And that was one of the most precious gifts anyone could have given me at that point. The permission to be still and to reflect and to make wiser choices, or wise choices going forwards. I remember he invited me up to the farm. And I thought that it was going to be I think it was over a weekend, and I thought that it was going to be like what I had come to know. And I work in the speaking, teaching, coaching, consulting, training area. So I thought, right, this is like a planning retreat. I know what that looks like. So we're going to go, we're going to sit down, he's going to ask me about my goals, we're going to go through things, we're going to strategize, we're going to come up with something. And then at the end of the weekend, I'm going to have something solid, and I'm going to go and I'm going to make that happen. And I got there, and I think when I arrived, he was in a hammock. And then we had breakfast, and then I think he got back in the hammock. And then we went to this little boathouse, and we sat, and I think we had coffee, and we talked about our lives, and we talked about 101 things that had nothing to do with business. And now we got to business eventually, but before then, he just gave, I think, permission. Yeah, he gave permission for every other part of me to arrive, and every other part of me to be and show up. You know, the part of me that's a wife, the part of me that at that stage wanted to be a mother, you know, the part of me that was a traveller, the part of me that was a backpacker, the part of, like, all these different parts of me were allowed to just show up. I think my reluctance around business coaches and my reluctance around leadership coaches has always been that it's one thing to talk about it, and it's one thing to have theories about it, and it's one thing to apply particular principles or a particular model to it. But until you've done it, you know, until you've been the one that's there at 8 p.m. not knowing what on earth, you know, you're going to do and how you're going to make something happen, until you've been the one up at 2 a.m. worrying about something, until you've been the one that's trying to have a life as well as do that, until you've been all of that and you understand the journey that is, I don't think you can really help someone. You can help someone, but it wasn't, what am I trying to say? There's nothing more valuable than spending time with someone that's walked your path. There's nothing more valuable than spending time with somebody that knows all of it. Like all of it, on every level. And also witnessing Mark and all the decisions that he's made in his life, you know? Like, he had this successful business and traveling the world making documentaries, and then he closed that down and he headed off as a traveller, and then he came back and he started a finance company, or I think a catering company first, and that was a big success, then a finance company, and then he decided to buy this farm and move his family there and spend time there and do something else. And so he's just walked so many paths, and he brings so many different perspectives to the time that you spend with him. And again, it just gives you permission to go, okay, I'm on this road, but there are so many other roads that I could go down. And there's so many other paths I could walk. So let's just step back, breathe, and make a conscious choice around what I want to do and how I'm doing it. And his unique field of experience enables him to walk with you down that path of making those choices, because he's done it, because he's been there, because he's seen it, because he's sat at his desk at 8 p.m. wondering what on earth he's going to do tomorrow, because he's been up at 2 a.m. wondering, because he's raised a family throughout all of that. He really knows the world, which I think makes all the difference. I think his genius is seeing the whole person. I think his genius is, you know, you're not just a CEO in that room with him, and you're not just a leader, and you're not just a spreadsheet and a P&L and, you know, someone who manages teams and staff. I think his genius is that he somehow manages to create a space where you can drop below that and be the person that started this journey, and be the person that had the ideas, and be the person that had a vision and wanted to create something. And in dropping there with him, it enables you to make a whole new brand of choices that aren't related to the immediate fires you're trying to put out in that moment. And I think that's really his genius. I think it's somehow the space he creates where you can drop down and make a better quality of choices. And also the permission to be still and to think and to actually take some time out, especially at the farm. I mean, God, if you've ever been to the farm, something just magical happens at the farm where you sit in that boat shed and the world just vanishes. And you do feel like you can breathe for the first time in a really long time and start to think about what it is that you actually want to create. And that's a gift. It's a huge gift, and it's very rare to find that, I think. Knowing and working with Mark's had a significant impact on my life especially at a particular point where I was transitioning out of one journey and looking to see what the next chapter would be. And he just gave me permission to stop and to think and to make that decision from not only a rested place, but from a place where all the facets of me were invited to be there. I think that's probably the largest impact he had on my world. I think Mark's always been like the voice of left field to me, which is really good for me because I can get very kind of in silo, very straight, very dedicated, very focused on one road. And Mark just kind of every so often he just chips in from the sidelines. Have you considered this? What about going this way? Have you looked at this? I've been working on this particular project. You should take a look. It might be something that's of interest. And you think, I have no idea why you told me that. But hang on. No, that's really interesting. No, that could work. And he's become that for me. He's like the little whisper of the wind that comes in and gives you something that you never expected. That not only feels left field, but is considered enough to actually be viable, which is probably important when you're talking about business. One of the things that made a huge impact on me when Mark and I were talking was conversations around the hero's journey. I'd heard about the hero's journey in movies and working in the speaking industry. You know, we work in stories, so I knew of it as a structure. But I just never really thought about myself as being a part of it being a part of a flow that I was in and the various elements of that journey. And it just gives you a sense of length, you know, of there will be a next, and then there'll be a next after that. And I don't know, again, it just gives you permission just to stop and go, okay, where am I in this journey? And where do I want to get to? And there'll be more chapters to come. But what have I learned from this one? And where do I want to take my next one? I don't have any business quantifiable results because when we started working together, I was coming towards a part of my life where I was slowing down and I was looking to take some time out. But that's kind of quantifiable just in itself. You know, like I probably would never have given myself permission just to be still and just to really think. And you know, I could give you KPIs, I could give you, you know, profit and loss results, I could give you a whole bunch of stuff, and all of that is very important, essential, really. But that piece, that permission to stop, that permission to breathe, that permission to make conscious, considered, and compassionate choices for yourself, that's a quantifiable thing that I don't think that we quantify enough. And that's something that he gave me. I would recommend Mark, and do, and have, and will continue to, recommend Mark to leaders, business owners, entrepreneurs, CEOs specifically. Again, I think that when you're in that particular position, your job is to hold a space for everybody that works for you and everybody that you have dealings with. And your job is to keep that space healthy for them, and your job is to keep that space well fed so that everybody is in a good place and able to go about and do their jobs to the best of their abilities. What can happen is in keeping that space full and holding that space and keeping it healthy, you stop being full and you can stop being healthy and you can stop being fed. And that's so normal and so usual, more usual than we ever like to admit. And you talk to any leaders when, you know, the cameras are off, and they'll all tell you of a moment where they've been sat somewhere going, I'm done, I'm just done. And if you've ever had that moment, you're getting close to that moment, then I would really recommend that you spend some time with Mark, because you staying fed, you staying healthy, you staying whole, that's the most precious gift you can give anybody that works with you. And Mark is that regular drip of that, someone else that can hold you, someone else that can feed you, someone else that can help keep you healthy mentally, spiritually, emotionally, but also in terms of focus and making considered choices. So yeah, leaders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, anybody that's out there using their energy to try and create something bigger, because that takes a lot of us, and we need to make sure that we take care of ourselves.